Hi, everyone. I'm your moderator today. Can you introduce yourselves and describe your work a little bit, each of you?
Okay, so I'm Valerie. I'm from Slovenia. I'm an intermediate artist, film director, videographer, and I'm also art researcher. So I'm combining new media art with some mostly video works. I do interactive art installations in galleries, and the main topics of my artworks are the human body and the interaction with technologies. So I would say, to make it very briefly, interaction of humans and technology and the relationships of both of those fields.
How about Katia next?
Okay, so my name is Katia Sophia Ditzler. I am based in Berlin. I'm originally from Western Germany, and my family is also from Russia. So I like to bring this kind of background also into my work, and my work is also basically kind of similar to what has been already said. Like, I consider myself to be an interdisciplinary artist. My background is actually music and literature, but I always wanted to find a way to basically augment literature and make it intermedia, basically. So I also work in like with video, with performance, and now also with immersive technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality. And this is basically what I'm interested in.
Great.
Yeah, good evening all, and good morning. Yeah, as you know, my name is Yohanna, Joseph Waliya. I'm from Nigeria. Basically, I work in literature and Twitter bot poetry. And I also digital poet. I've, I have some work that talks about climate change. And one of the work that has won even Digital Humanities Award for 2020, that is Climatophasis. Uh, why I like African literature is because we want to also see how the intersection of computer in humanities and also in literature as it relates to African culture and African literature, fiction, and the rest. Thank you. That's a little for now.
Very good. So my
Yeah.
first question for everyone, it's I'm going to start kind of broad. So, what elements and interests and experience in your life, you can go all the way back to childhood if you want, have influenced your work, your aesthetic, but more specifically, do you think brought you to hybrid works as opposed to something more traditional in a single field?
Okay. I is the question addressed to me or
Everyone,
anybody?
sure, anybody.
Okay. Let me just start talking about my works. Actually, what inspired my work uh, is migration, like Momenta. Momenta is digital poetry that I wrote in 2019. It talks about African youth leaving African towards Europe, seeking for greener pasture. I was using digital medium, that is digital poetry, trying to tell them that this African that you people are trying to run away, looking for greener pasture in the Europe, it is just for a moment that we will also come back and get our destiny in our hand and work to make Africa better. And then I have to tell them that we will overcome, we will triumph over our issues and our problems. That's how what inspired Momentum. Now, climatophasis, I realized during the COVID-19 and uh, the climate change was iterated a lot as one of the things that is causing uh, diseases at all. Then it casts my mind back to our culture and our belief system in Africa. Here, especially my mother tongue, we realize that there are some birds. I don't know the name in English, but we call it in language shimdu. And shimdu is a bird that, if it is killed, as the carbon, that's the smoke coming out, spread in the environment, it causes cough. And that cough is very serious cough. It kills a lot of children, most especially children. Then when I read in some articles that actually COVID-19 originated from animals, in China, I say, wow, which means our superstition in Africa related to that bird might be scientifically true. That is why I wrote what I call Le Monde Instable. Now, coming to metamorphosis, I realized in my village there is the rain season change. In Africa here we have two seasons: dry season and rainy season. Now, this rainy season, in olden days, let me just say in late 90s and early 90s, it starts raining in my area from April. But right now, as I'm talking to you, sometime even close to the ending of May, we will not see rain. And the rain before it starts from April and end in October, late October. But now, as if it is being pushed further due to the climate change, then we realize that the rain starts late May, like 23rd, 24th May, and end early October, early November. So as if the change in climate has pushed our season further. Now I have to talk about in my artist statement that we have also to go now for the new types of crops that will fit our vegetation, that will fit our climate. And that's why I wrote Climatic Forces. These are the things that are like spark my work, my environment, my African tradition and heritage, and then the happenings around the world due to the influence of climate change. Thank you.
Would either of you like to answer?
Well, maybe I can share also what is my inspiration and what inspired me also to go deeper into the connection with technology and the connection with poetry. So yeah, I started studying very traditional film directing back in the days, but I realized that just the classical, screening of the film is not enough for me in order to express all the story or the narrative and everything behind the content I want to share with the public. So I started to explore experimental films more, and I started to work with different video mapping and using the space. I realized that the element of the space actually is giving me more freedom to be more expressive, and through that I soon began to get the sense of what technology can do, how can it benefit me in order to work with it as a medium of expression. And soon I encountered all of these augmented reality technologies, virtual reality, also artificial intelligence, and such topics and technologies I'm working on now, also with the help of the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence. So we are connecting a lot of that through scientists and various studies. But for me, it's really also important to get the feedback of the public. So the interactive part is extremely important. Also, when I was back in the day still doing very traditional videos, or traditional in a sense, you sit as a public on a chair and watch on the screen. I was really impressed how some of the really simple works can be so, impactful to some people. And when I saw the feedback, I started to realize it can be some dialogue, it can be the story can continue after the screening. So in terms of that, I was really impressed how technology can help me to be more expressive. So that was, my background in terms of how I started to work with the technologies. But the most important is also that with the use of artificial intelligence, AR, VR, and stuff like that, and the connection with the scientists and other experts, I realized it can be also beneficial to, join the creative mind with the scientific part. So I really enjoy now working with the scientists. And for example, we are developing some of the programs for the people who suffer with dementia, for example. So in these terms, I really see the benefit how the artist can collaborate with the scientist. And mostly I go in this direction. From my youth as well, I was very curious, and I always was seeking different ways of how to use the classical in terms of the technologies. For example, how the camera can be used for something else. So I constantly question all of these mediums of expression. So yeah, that's the brief background of my work.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's actually pretty kind of also similar to my journey in a way. So my mom used to be an opera singer, so that's why music always played like a big role for me, and that's why I didn't want to choose in between art forms, which you actually should usually, because you want to be an expert in something. It makes sense to actually really try to master something. But I realized at some point that you can either go this way, that you master one art form and you have to focus on it, or you try to be like a dilettante in everything, but like try to form synergies. And I think both approaches do have their value, because you need experts, but you also need people who maybe, yeah, who do experiments and who do basically maybe also fail, but who might be able to also give some new impulses, or even pave the road for some new aesthetics or new ways or something like that. And this reminds me actually of, I mean, right now we have this like really interesting frontier of, yeah, we do have now technology at our service, like technology that even 50 years ago just some visionaries imagined, but now we do have them at our fingertips. And that's why I think it's kind of our duty to experiment with it, because otherwise, like, it would go to waste, right? And I mean, just imagine, like, 100 years ago, film was was kind of also an expression of this frontier where a new technology emerged, a new art form emerged, where you had to put things together. And of course, you had a lot of people who would say, like, film, who needs film? Like, who needs movies? Nobody likes movies, this is just not art. But then you had also people who jumped into it and saw that there is potential, that you can create something new, and who actually really, yeah, went this way, like went this road and created a like basically shaped a totally new art form. And I think now we do have a similar frontier. Now we do have, yeah, immersive technologies, we do have virtual reality, we have augmented reality, like extended reality in general. We have now ways of creating truly intelligent art, like that also involves artificial intelligence. We do have now so many things that we can actually use, and that, like, there are so many possibilities that we even cannot fathom yet, and which we can still, we are going to be able to, yeah, to develop. And it's incredibly exciting right now. And there's another thing that Valerie said that I found very interesting, that she enjoys working with scientists, like people from a totally different background and a different maybe way of thinking as well. I think thinking like an artist is definitely different from thinking like a scientist. I mean, there are some things that might be similar. Like a scientist also has to be creative at some point to be able to create synergies, to be able to create or come up with an idea of how things might work together. Whereas an artist also has to do research and has to really actually like do their homework. But it's still like different modi operandi, I think. However, there's something interesting that I saw, which I only saw in the US, but which is still an interesting development. Apparently, some companies started to employ artists as artists in residence, basically. So um, you do have like a normal company, but you would offer an artist to come and offer them like a certain sum, whatever, be there for a month or like maybe even virtually, like on a remote residency, basically. Um, but you would profit of this. I mean, you can always like think whether that's okay or not, but you would profit of this fresh thinking that is kind of, yeah, hopefully in like in an ideal situation, maybe what we as artists can offer the best, like thinking out of the box and actually offering up new synergies. So yeah, that would be it.
Oh, those are all really interesting.
Uh,
I know I'm your. I'm sorry. Yes. Oh, I know I'm your facilitator, but you both, all of you, just inspired another question. So it's interesting that the original terminology of avant-garde was French military, and it was the front line. So it was that poor bastard with the drum or the poor kid with the flag that goes on the line and gets shot. So avant-garde is an interesting position because everyone here, me included, would be considered to a certain extent avant-garde because we're doing things on a new frontier or trying new toys, if you want to put it that way. But the thing that inspires my question would be, out of all the interests that everyone here has, and you don't want to be a dilettante, but you've chosen, like your moderator, not to do just one thing, what would you say in your journey so far has been the area of focus that kind of gave you the glue to then branch out? Like for me, it was writing, and then I've moved into digital art and everything else. How have you avoided being a dilettante, basically?
For me, I would say I constantly return back to one question lately. I mean, it's been questioned many times, but specifically for the technology of artificial intelligence, because now it's becoming the buzzword, it's everywhere. But for me, the main question lately is popping up: can artificial intelligence be creative on its own? Meaning, like without the human interaction. So, this is the question I'm constantly dealing in my artworks as well. Um, and as Katia also mentioned, these artist residencies programs, it's been really great. I've been to a couple of them lately, specifically in the research centers when people are, developing all of these systems for artificial intelligence. And yeah, for me, the constant question is: can artificial intelligence be creative? And also, what does it mean when it will be creative, and what the creativity is? So then I return all the way back: what is, for a person to be creative? It's the same question: what's the criteria for that? So yeah, this maybe I went a little bit off topic, but still, this is the main question I'm constantly working on. I'm exploring. I'm doing experiments with that, and in some of the projects, I've touched a lot on that subject. So yeah, I would pop out that question as well, maybe for later to discuss it. Where are we now, and where are we going with the technology in this sense?
Right, right.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to actually try to master, like, I mean, just 5 minutes ago, I said I'm against mastering something or mastering an art form. But let me specify, like, I think it makes sense to try to master one art form at least like really learn it from, yeah, like learn the basics, study everything you can, and try to, you know, have at least this as a foundation that you can build whatever else you want on. So because I think, I mean, you prime, like it may really make sense to go to some sort of like art academy or conservatory or even study creative writing. um, Really have this time where you kind of focus, where you learn your trade basically, because then you can do whatever you want, because then you will be able to also apply what you've learned to other art forms. Of course, when you study like playing an instrument, of course, at some point, you know, the window is closed. Like you can still basically get good at it, but you're not gonna be a virtuoso. This is like you would have had to start playing when you were a child. So, but still, you can learn about music, you can learn how to think musically, for example, even at a later age. But it really makes sense to have some sort of foundation, to have learned something, and then maybe do something else, because our other art forms are more easy, like are more easily to learn, or to at least understand if you have this foundation.
Maybe, Katia, I would just like to add something briefly before I give the word to Hannah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. For me, this form was video camera. So also in my student years, I was working a lot on television. I was filming a lot, working with these big cameras. Also later on, I started using 360 cameras. So from the basic of actually analog photography, which I did in my childhood years, my father taught me, and from that on, I was building gradually to digital format and then to classic video camera. Later on, all these new special 4K, whatever, 360. But yeah, it's really important to, I think, go into at least one field very specifically, and from that everything can open, of course. And specifically in my case, you know, the video itself, it also has sound is extremely important in the video. So this is another field of study. I'm still learning a lot from that. And there is the narration, the story, the, you know, the script, the everything. So but I think in every art field, if you go specifically first into the one direction, all of other fields start to open up, and you can later on go through similar process, but much faster, because you already have the good foundation, at least from one field of arts. Yeah, that was the adding point.
Thank you. Wow, it's so engaging, because to be at the front line of a new digital media is not easy. Like me, it was after high school I saw the first computer. I don't know, throughout my high school, I didn't see any computer to use as a desktop or anything. So after high school, my mother has to like say, you have to go to university, you have to go to high school, to advanced level. So there is a computer school that's being computer course that was organized by Adama State University here in Nigeria. So we are the first pioneer of the people that went to learn word processing. That is Microsoft Word. You know, that back to 2004. So I have now to like learn all these things, but it didn't make sense to me because I didn't have any computer to play with it or to do anything. Now, till I went to the university, as Katia said that it's good somebody to master one field. I was like, I am not artist at the initial stage because I'm pure science student. I deal with chemistry, physics, biology in my secondary school. So when I went to the university, I have to change from art to I have to change from science to art. So I have to apply to study French. And that's what my degree that I had, my first degree is in French. Even the second degree is in French. So what programming is one of the thing I would like to learn, but I couldn't learn it easier because the time that I'm supposed to go to the university, I dropped learning coding in one private institution that I paid in order to learn coding. Back after my secondary school, when I started working in the university now, and I come in contact with digital humanities. So I was running away from like mostly art students here in Nigeria, they run away from mathematics and other courses like, but now you can't do humanity without coding, without mathematics. So virtually everything, everybody's specialty is tilting towards computation. So that's how now, as a frontier, as a people that are now into this new field that want to master, we have to master. Even you are studying religious study today, you must learn how to compute, how to even program app in order to pass the message of the Bible. So everything now is taking shape. Now, to come to the former question, please, there's something I forgot. One of the things that is inspiring my artwork and my digital poetry, especially, is children. I coded through using the cheap boat made easy, made quick or something, made quick, but I have to create a piece that's fighting for the children's rights. Here in Nigeria, we have about 13 million children out of school. And most of them, they come from the northern part of Nigeria. Now I have to take this into consideration and take it into Twitter and make what I call botification of Janus Kochak philosophy of education, where I have to name the Twitter board Tiny Protest, Tiny Kochak. Now, Tiny Kochak is fighting for the children's right, telling Nigerians, telling everybody that these children are supposed to be cared for. They're supposed to go to school. In fact, there is an emir called Muhammad Sanusi who was hosted out of his power because he was fighting for the children's education in the northern Nigeria. And Kano Emirate is one of the strongest and the most prominent emirate in Nigeria. It's just like if you become the emir of Kano, as if you are in fact, from Sultan of Sokoto in the northern Nigeria is the emir of Kano. So, but when he fought for the children, that thing inspired me. I said, okay, we have not to leave the man only to fight, but we have also to fight for the children's right, even in the digital world. Because nowadays in Africa here, we have smartphones. Smartphones are cheap. We don't have computer, desktop. You see even if you go to the rural areas in Africa, you will get even little children with smartphone. So that's why I have to go on that boat, so that now children can, in the name of playing toy, in the name of like getting something on Twitter, they will say that we need to have the right to education, right to play, right not to marry early, because children are sent into marriage at the age of 9, a girl child at the age of 9, 13, and 14 in the northern Nigeria. So what I am just talking to you, that we have to carry art as a means of revolution, even for human rights, even for to speak about our culture. We have to carry it because this is the only tool that everybody is trying to lay hand upon it. So these are the things that also sparked my work, and also as a new field here, like when I was coding all these things, trying to put them in order, I got a lot of problem because we have issue of light. These are the kind of dilemma that we issue of light. I have to be going to the church. I have to go into the places where I can get light to power my system. At long last, even somebody stole the laptop. So we see that being in the frontier to make something to be done, there are a lot of challenges. Thank you.
Very interesting. This leads to my next question. I'm first going to describe something. So I forget who first talked about this, but so there's an augmented reality machine. You turn it on, it creates pictures, worlds, immersive environments, characters, scenes, metaphors. You see through another's eyes, you see the universal, you see something inside of yourself. It pulls up things from the past. That's a book. If you imagine as you read a book, it kind of creates a mixed reality. But here's the question that's related to the edge of technology, like we're all talking about. Will the book ever die, and should it?
I think the book is actually a relatively new thing. So it's a new concept in a way. Literature and storytelling have existed before there were books, and it's probably going to exist even after, even if physical books disappear to a certain extent. And I think that doesn't have to be necessarily a bad thing, even because we just create new forms of storytelling, new forms of thinking, new forms of transferring knowledge and telling stories. And I personally wouldn't want physical books to die, but on the other side, I think it's also because you always have to think about this this topic of conservation, because like basically you can conserve a physical book, I think, more easily than data, because I mean we do have that already, like the same problem with old videos or whatever. Like at least every 20 years you have to convert film or videos into a new digital format, because otherwise you're not going to be able to access it in the future. So that problem basically goes away when we talk about books. However, but on the other side, like they're big, they are heavy, like you can transport them easily. However, one of the beauties of one of the beauties of literature is also to just stumble upon literature, upon text by chance, like going to a library and just get out a book, any book out of the shelf, and just open up a random page and be able to like be inspired by randomness. And that kind of goes away when you have to rely on literature, for example, being on your hard drive and having to specifically look for something and choose that, because the element of chance goes away to a certain extent. And that's actually, I think, more dangerous than we think, because it makes everything controllable. And I think we all agree that like sometimes you need things to have things not under control to be able to be innovative. So yeah, these are my thoughts when it comes to that.
Thank you. Will book go into extinction? In Africa, I would say no, and I would say yes at the same time, because yes, because even the children in the kindergarten are playing with the toys are computerized. You see, by the time the children are used to one particular medium of expression, or like let's just say gadget, they wouldn't like to delve with another thing that they are not used to. So, for example, now computer games are loaded on the on some console or some terminals or in the phone, and it's offered to a baby at the age of 2. Now, see, in the next generation, you will see that book will go into extinction. You will not see children that are carrying books, because they are used to it, and they will only accept on the expressions or the novels or the play or the literature that are coming via that digital medium. No, in some aspect is that it's for the millennial Okay, let me just say from people like us that are born in 80s, because we were raised with books. Even when we are using digital medium, we are apply hybrid. We use digital medium, we use book. But now I can tell you that when you see little children that are more especially in Nigeria, in the cities of Nigeria, what they can do with computer, you even imagine that how can this kind of child do this? For example, there's one boy that's 9 years old. During one of the boot camp for computer programming, he created about 9 games. 9 games within the space of like 3 months. 9.
Wow.
He alone. You see, 9 different games.
How is that possible? Like, this is
He was even interviewed on CNN.
talent.
Because he learned. He said that he want to become computer, but using that, there's a software called Scratch, and the other, I forgot the name. He did it. So by the time we are seeing that, and when the children are used to it, they must get consumer from their generation, and that is how the book is going into extinction. Now, I wrote an article that was published in the Future of Text in December, about just 2 months ago. Now, I come to understand that books, I don't have just like that kind of crazy idea. Now, in the near future, books will be reading us, not we reading books. The text will be reading us, not actually we reading them. Because by the time you appear on your computer, and the computer will begin to detect you your mood, and begin like to show you comedy, just pumping comedy to make you to feel like to calm down your tension. You know, you will see something like that, because artificial intelligence and machine learning and deep learning, they are sharpening things. Could you imagine that the algorithm are reading you, trying like to, because when you are clicking your Facebook, you understand something, that if you click one, let's example, you like shoe, you click one advert of shoe, anytime you will be coming to your page, sometimes you see pop-ups series of different kind of shoes, because the algorithm has already read your heart that you like such kind of products. So in the near future, book may go into extinction. Even we'll still get them in our library. They will only be on the shelf. So time shall come where our children will see, hey, I heard that there's one technology called codex book, that paper. So can we just go as a museum to go and watch and see how the technology works? Because things are changing. Even as we try to maintain that we are traditionalists, we don't want to like, but change is constant. And then I see book will go into extinction because of a usage of devices. And this thing is happening even in the family. You know, finally, there was a time when I was programming trying to program some of my work. My wife needed my attention. I was still on it. I said, please, I'm coming, let me finish. Before I know, she vexed, she carried my computer. She threw it through the window from the story building.
Wow.
Do you understand?
Okay, I would never want to make your wife angry. I would never want to make her angry.
So this kind of thing, because when you love something, you have passion for it, and you see things are happening. We see our children. I was at one of the meeting of ELO when they were teaching about children. Even Astrid, what's the name of that? Astrid, right? Astrid, the lady that is in Norway or Sweden. She says something that said that her child doesn't read book anymore. She said they are trying now they are trying like to force the children to go back and pick books because they are used to electronic gadgets. So that is what I'm like envisaging or trying to put across. Thank you.
Yeah, the topic of passion is something what technology is still lacking. So I think that's really important. But as you mentioned, for me, just today I got a PDF to read something, and I'm still old school. I just went to printing. I need to see it in material. But when I printed it, I realized, that this is not ecological. So for me, the question of books is more connected with the conservation of the materials, and thinking if we really need to print everything. But maybe this will change, I think, with new generation. I have no idea, because I grew up as a child. I was used to read on material, on books. So for me, I still struggle a little bit to read on digital screens. So maybe it will shift with the new generations, because basically they are born already with the mobile phones in their hands, or tablets. That's what I noticed lately, really young babies with the technology in the hand. So I have no idea. Well, maybe for them it's more primer, to read out of the screen. So this is one thing. But the other thing, I think the books will never be, forgotten, because our brain as an organ, it has a capacity, of course, a limited amount of thoughts. So when we started to put down our thoughts on any media, before books already, then we extended our mind and we became intelligent. So I think this connected a lot, of course, with archive, with documentation, with the history and the future. So yeah, because of the limit of the human brain, I think we need books, and we will need books in the future. But the format, of course, that's the other question, and it really probably, it depends of how we are used to read. So yeah, I'm still the classic materialistic reader.
My questions for you are written on scrap paper with pen, so I feel you on the old school.
Yeah, I also have the notebooks with some cute images. But yeah, it's really the preference of how you are used to, and probably the shift will be in the next generation. I still think about that a lot. And yeah, the connection with the materials and the ecological part of that. Although, also for technology, for all the tablets and mobile phones, we also, are making our environment dirty. And I don't know what is actually the solution. Maybe to be completely virtual, but in what sense? That's the question.
Right. Okay, I have a couple funkier, more esoteric questions coming down the tubes now. How will COVID mutate literature and how we experience it, or has it already?
Maybe to just go on the COVID part, I have no idea about the literature. Probably the content it will influence, but from my personal experience, I had recently two bigger installations. For example, one was the sound installation, 22 channels, and we developed this project for 2 years before COVID. It was a documentation of all the spatial sounds around Balkan graveyards. And the whole visual concept in the museum was built that the massive amount of headphones will be hanged from the ceiling. But because of the COVID, the museum said it's not allowed to use the headphones, because people will, touch the thing. So we last moment had to change completely the visualization of the thing. We had to use it on little speakers. So it actually, the COVID influenced the visualization of the art piece. So from my personal experience, it's now influencing a lot. Also now I'm working with some haptic technology, where you are using some virtual elements, but also some parts are sensors and they are touching the human and the person. So yeah, it is influencing already. And also now I see in myself, when I'm developing new projects, that I'm already thinking about this element of human touch in the artworks. So I think in the literature, of course, in the context, it will also be connected, probably also with general public interaction with each other. The social distancing definitely influenced each other. So I'm curious about that. It's an interesting thing to think of. in the future.
Yeah, I also think, I mean, there were some people who basically already, wrote COVID plays or COVID books or whatever, and I avoid that like the plague because I just really don't want to. It's just too obvious. It's basically, I don't think you can. It's probably still too early. Like, I don't think it's right to use this situation right now for art because we still don't know all ramifications. Like, we still don't know how it is going to end, what societal changes are like gonna play out. I mean, a lot of them already played out, but it's an ongoing process. So I don't think it's possible right now to already analyze everything. Um, Also, what it does to the economy or whatever. And so yeah, like I don't wanna. I mean, there was like I think a book that came out about COVID poetry in Germany, and like an anthology, and I refused to read it because I just don't want to. Maybe I'm a snob, but I think that's okay in that case. And but what is interesting is, or what is going to be even more interesting is like how the situation can be used productively. Because I mean, obviously, like we had a situation where a lot of very rich people got even richer, and a lot of other people got like plunged into economic hardship. But it is still a very, very interesting time where a lot of interesting things can happen. And it is still possible to use this time productively and maybe even work towards societal change. It was like really this kind of seizure that opened also up a lot of possibilities. And when I talk about like my art, I focused more on digital stuff due to COVID. I mean, I have been doing already some of that stuff before, but it opened up also. I mean, because I think it is a mindset that is really difficult to have, but like I think we should all try to work on it in order to not be totally destroyed by the crisis, and that's actually trying to see opportunity in crisis. I mean, it sounds like very cheesy, but I think it's something like trying to develop this mindset can keep you healthy. And yeah, and I tried to adhere to that, and basically try to look for ways of like how to do art that is not forced or like not, yeah, kind of dependent on contact or like on being at a place, and therefore, for example, also trying to, yeah, basically move more into the digital space. And and I think that there's still a lot of stuff that hasn't been experimented with and that we probably should jump into.
Thank you. As for me, COVID-19 is a blessing and also as is a curse because many people have lost their life. As Katia said, many people also have gotten richer. But it inspired our work. We must talk about the happening. All about literature is the happening of the society that we have to turn it into fictional in order to create utopia. And then it has not started from us. Albert Camus wrote the novel called La Peste. La Peste is that like epidemic. So which he presented as the war between Germany and France was just like epidemic or like a epidemic that happened to them. So if you see during this COVID, people develop how to love their neighbors. Before everybody is on his own, nobody cares about anybody. But now you see that people are even giving palliatives to the neighbor, palliatives to something. So it has taught us how to love humanity. That's another blessing aspect of it. But when it comes to the literature, it must inspire artists or writers to write about this happening and to document that social things has happened in the near future to our children, and say that, oh, so yes, something happened as we have what we call World War One and World War Two. All this documentation, that is part of literature. It shaped our literatures. When you see the World War, second and the first and second, it has shaped the literature in the Europe and even in Africa. It was the time that African literature were able now to say that, hey, these white guys, we used to see them that they are not like they are angels, they are coming from above, so they can die. That time now they begin to write about it and say that, oh, white people that are our colonizers, they are like us. So they too, they die. They too experiment this kind of. In fact, it is an eye opener. Even pandemic, coronavirus is an eye opener to us, even in Africa. So, likewise, it must reflect even our artwork. For example, now for the first time, being brought up in the Catholic, I come to, and also still in the Catholic, but not Roman. I'm in Old Catholic, but I was born in the Roman Catholic. Now I discovered that Pope Francis said something that is very important, that even it affected the church sacrament. Before they say before the people stick to confession, they have to go and see priest to confess. Why did Pope told the Catholic faithful that say you can pray even in your closet and go here? So, and because there is a loss of hope, and that's why I wrote the digital poetry that called Pope Lost Hope. Pope lost hope because the masses were not longer celebrated openly. So you see that pandemic has affected religion, has affected our social life, has affected even our research. So that is why we have to talk, because there's a time that this pandemic will be dealt with and we will not remember again. But we want to go to our books, and that's what will now cause what we call the periods in literature. You see post-pandemic and pre-pandemic. Because what are our preoccupation of those days? What are the preoccupation of our artists? What are the preoccupation of our writers in before COVID? Maybe we'll be talking about American politics and how Obama, the first black man, went to the throne, to the White House. But now, pandemic has taken over everything to the extent that it inspired the artists. Though, as Katia said, that it's premature to talk about it, but it's not yet premature. You know why I say this is because people will look and see that this was written during pandemic, and after this, later some people will say, okay, this is post-pandemic literature. So the narration now will be different from what is happening at that time during the COVID, and what happened after COVID, and what happened before COVID. So it shaped the period of literature, and it will make us to have another segment of like new literature classifications. So that's what I'm seeing the pandemic has done to us. Thank you.
that leads to my next question, which I'll first phrase it with a short narrative. So Marshall McLuhan in the 60s, the media theorist, spoke about, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if we had a global village, and a collapsing of all those issues. And then you have the internet, and now we're sitting here on Zoom. And then you had artworks like in 1980, 1979, I think it was, that A Hole in Space, where people in New York saw a wall and suddenly they saw people, and it wasn't a mirror, it was people in Los Angeles. And that was the first telepresence artwork, arguably. Well, now we're talking, all of us, with an absolute collapse of time and space into a singular Zoom call. How does that affect potential artworks, and could we use Zoom in creative ways, or is it too much of a utilitarian piece of software? I know there's been one Zoom ballet I've seen so far, which is pretty interesting, but that's all I've really seen.
Zoom ballet. Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Watch
It was
any Zoom ballet, but I watched a couple of theater shows actually in the worst lockdown we had. So it was interesting, but of course, completely different experience, I would say. So it's it saved us a lot. So the cultural workers could work, of course, but it's a completely different medium, and I still prefer to meet live if possible. That's one thing, but I think also in a way it opened up a lot of new channels and ways of collaboration. So I think the Zoom kind of formats will definitely continue. It will, I hope, develop into something more. That's why I really like now the projects I'm working on these haptical devices. It's really interesting, to also get a touch of each other long distance, but not just the hug and these basic things, but also the smell and like some other sounds, and the question of pheromones and hormones. That is also something the Zoom and the cameras are cutting us away. So I think in the future, when the technology develops a bit more, it will enhance our experience of these Zoom calls. But we are still in the beginning stages, although the video chat rooms and stuff like that existed for many years, but we never paid too much attention to that. So now suddenly we had to use it. We are still using it, but yeah, it will definitely open some new doors in the future, and I can't wait to see what it will bring in the ultimate Zoom call in the future.
The meta Zoom call.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have to say I expected more from Zoom or similar streaming or like conferencing software. I mean, just to keep touch, that's kind of cool. Like, I mean, I don't know how many Zoom birthday parties I've been there, quite a few. So that was like an interesting novelty. But when it comes to watching streams or whatever, I have to say, at some point, I just got fed up. Like, I really can't watch a scream anymore, or like watching, or even if it's made interesting, because you can of course use technology, like use, for example, Zoom, and make it more interesting. And I went to a couple of conferences that were like where people actually tried to stage them and actually really make them interesting when it comes to Zoom, by having a live stream from somewhere, but then also music, but then also all from different locations. Then having an interactive element, so that was really cool. Or these kind of events were really cool, but I think they only work in this kind of like hybrid educational conference setting, um, but not so much for normal artwork, because I mean I can't watch screens anymore. Like, I'm just fed up. What I would have wished for, and probably that's something that we can keep for the next pandemic, um, I think is less tiring to be in virtual reality and watch a show in virtual reality and try to be really immersed in a space, like be not distracted, because that's also a problem. I think when you just watch a screen, you get easily distracted, and that's which you would not have in a live setting. If you would be actually somewhere where you would watch a show or something like this, you would be there, you would be forced to be immersed, which you don't have if you're like at home. And most people like to get distracted, me too, by a phone or whatever. So I think if we would have had better virtual reality shows where you would be really immersed in the virtual space, and like actors, dancers, whatever, concerts would actually really happen, which I mean, that was already happening, but it was not yet. It's, I mean, the technology in that extent is like still in its infancy, so it's like not yet at the spot where it becomes interesting, or like really interesting and really something that the majority of people would adopt. So yeah, that I would have missed. And I think again that's something that we should work for the next pandemic. However, there's one thing that I once did in Outspace VR. That's this virtual reality, I think it was acquired by Microsoft, but it's actually an Indian company, I think. So they do have VR spaces, and you can do like open mics. You can play games with people all over the world, whatever. And I once went for fun, like um, to a VR mass, like a Protestant mass, and that was
Oh,
like
wow.
really funny because I mean,
Could you move around the
absolutely.
space as well in the mass, or just watch? What was the
No, you could go in there. I mean, obviously, like in your VR headset, and it would be there, and it was just, I mean, really difficult to deal with the situation because I mean I was there, I was with friends and we just wanted to check it out, and we went there, and my friends started like randomly harassing under my account other churchgoers.
wow?
So I probably that might have like ruined my reputation a bit. um, but it was still something absolutely weird because you go to this thing and there's like a mass, like a service, and I mean I'm like not a religious person or something like this, so that was still interesting. And I think these are the moments that we like, that at least I found really entertaining during the pandemic. But again, I would have wished for better immersive and a bigger adoption of immersive technologies, because that would have been better for cultural work. But also on the other side, I'm happy that COVID is happening now and not like 10 or 20 years ago, because then I think things would have been much more difficult for the art scene.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
now when you mentioned all of this, the mass and the experiences, we are still in the process of getting, really familiar with the technology. So, for example, many of my friends still haven't used the VR headset. So, I think we still need a couple of more years, that everybody gets really comfortable with all of that things, and then the content will have a chance to develop a bit more, and we could focus more on the content, because now I think we are still in the process of techno fascinization. So everything
Um,
sense, like the glasses and especially augmented reality glasses and stuff like that, still need to be technically developed, and then also to get familiar with that. And once we will overcome this, I think it will open a new world, even new decade.
exactly. It's just really it's too early for that, and also there's not that much interesting content available yet. I mean, it's still developing, still in the beginning, and which is also very interesting because as I said in the beginning, we're now at this point in time that we probably last had 100 years ago, or like more than 100 years ago, when cinema developed. And now we can basically shape, if we work with these technologies, we can basically shape how they're going to look like in the future. So that's absolutely exciting and a very interesting, yeah, chance to actually, deliver your line in a way. And but yeah, and I mean I'm trying, I'm a total propagandist, like propagandist. I'm like showing, I'm forcing all my friends to try my VR headset, and I'm always trying like to make them like be fascinated with it. And usually it works, often it also doesn't work because people kind of don't like it. But I'm doing the Lord's work basically. So if you have VR
Okay,
headsets, please do that too.
Kasia, do you know that, Kasia, you are now buying my idea that book will go into extinction, because I am now thinking of the concept called metaverse literature.
Yeah, that's
Where when I write my novel, the character will go use their cars, use their own VR gadgets, and go and become one of the character inside the novel.
but that's
So,
basically
so
a computer game. That's basically yeah, but this is basically a video game that you can develop. But video games are literature too. Never forget that. Like
yes,
video games are also very interesting art,
literature.
which is literature.
So I am talking about metaverse literature, which is another aspect of electronic literature. Metaverse literature, because when I started reading about metaverse, I said, wow, that now people will go, instead of them going to the site to go and like supervise a real estate, they will just go to read their VR, check the room, look at the corner, look at everything, and then begin and pay the money because they have already gone and see the room, will see the place. So you see, even in the literature, you will see that all those fictional kind of plot and the space in the literature, you see that people will experiment it, will have the experience. Actually, the immersive kind of storytelling, to the best of my knowledge, as I study, there's one, I think, American author or European author that started talking about this since 1930s.
Mm.
Since 1930s. So when I think you can get it in the canonization of hypertext by Astrid, it's where she talked about the immersive storytelling that is as an aspect that was developed, I think, either Germany in 1930s, about how the theorist was talking about how we can be immersed into literature as an aspect of reading literature. So as we are talking, we see that all the traditionalists that I used to keep book on the shelf, using book. Before I used to write everything now in the book, but now when I know that I have my Kindle, I will just write everything that I want to write that come to my mind, and even the plan of what I want to do. I write them on the smartphones, on my Kindle, and to do that. Thank you very much, because you have given us time to express ourselves, and thank you. Nice to see Katia and Valerie.
Yeah, it was really nice to meet you guys, and I hope at some point we're gonna meet in person somewhere in this world.
In
It
the
was
in
a
the old
pleasure
flesh.
having me, so thank you, and I'm looking forward where our literature paths will cross in the future, live and in person, of course.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much.